I had heard about this film, The Man in the White Van, when it was briefly in theaters last year, as I record this last year. If you're watching this 10 years from now, 11 years ago, it was in theaters. And I was curious. It was a serial killer movie set in the 70s, two things that get my attention, allegedly based on a true story, which doesn't always mean a lot because based on a true story can be like, here's a film about Martin Luther King when he was a prize fighter in World War II and had superpowers. Well, it's based on the true fact that there was a man named Martin Luther King. Anyway, this film, Man in the White Van, set in 1975, predominantly about a man in a white van who abducts women and does horrible things to them. But the movie is only peripherally about that. The movie is really about, it's a coming of age story set in rural Florida in the 70s about Annie Williams, portrayed by Madison Wolfe, who's a girl who likes horses and has a family she doesn't get along with and is accused of telling tall tales and just wants to kiss the cute boy at the Halloween party and all that. And she is the stalking victim of this man in the white van. So, set in the 70s, which is something that immediately gets my attention, but having lived through part of that decade and also having a lot of knowledge about that decade, I always look at anything that's set in the past with a pretty critical eye. This movie did it pretty well. There were only a couple moments where I was like, There was a moment where, speaking as a semi-expert, she puts a Partridge Family record on a turntable, and we see a close-up of the 45 label for I Think I Love You. It's on Bell, it's correct. Drops the needle, and we get a wide shot, and she's listening to an album. And I'm like, hold on. And then later when she puts the album away, it's clearly not a Bell Records label. That's nitpicking, I realize, but that was just a tiny thing that pulled me out of the movie. Also, they go to a drive-in, something that I know a little bit about, and it's clearly this faux thing that was set up in a field somewhere. But where they're watching clearly something pulled from YouTube on the big screen. But the basic issue I had with The Man in the White Van, performances fine for the most part. Some of it felt a little regional theater. Looks very good. Very well shot, nice color, nicely photographed, nicely lit and all of that. But it was really dull to me, for me. It became clear that you're watching this film and I'm like, is there a man in the white van? You do keep cutting back to this guy and they keep like rolling back the numbers that you see like a year, 1970, and then the sound, 71, and they'll show you other times really brief, like a minute or so of somebody being stalked and then yanked out of frame into the white van, and that's all we see. So they keep hinting that this guy's been doing this for a while, and they bop back and forth in time, which wasn't really necessary to me. And mostly it's really focusing on this girl and her coming of age and her social and family problems, which a little of that character development is great, but if it's called The Man in the White Van and you're really selling it as a horror film, eventually, the girl and the man in the white van do meet, and there's a struggle, but also this is one of those modern films where every time something exciting happens on screen, the camera's shaking and cutting all over the place, and you're like, okay, I guess something violent is occurring right now. So it was really not a film for me. It was really a slog to get through. It was one of those films where partway through, I just have given up, and I'm just waiting for it to end. It's a shame because there were good people in it. Larter plays the mother. Sean Astin plays the father, although he felt like he was playing it a little broad, playing it a little bit like he was playing local theater or something. And I like Sean Astin. Just in this, the direction was kind of weird. Same with, there's an older sister of our heroine. She's played by Brec Bassinger, or Bassinger, if you will. And the first time we see her, she doesn't feel like she's a member of the family. I'm like, is she the maid? Is she a nanny? I mean, what's going on here? The way she acts is really weird and formal, and I don't know. This was a really odd film and really pretty dissatisfying other than the look. They actually managed to get a couple of really well-known songs for the film of the era, which is always impressive to me because I know how incredibly expensive songwrites can be and how they can just be a mess. Then they had maybe a sound-alike or two, and then a couple songs that I'm like, this is clearly a new song that only vaguely sounds like 1975. And then the credits roll for at least 7 minutes. And this is a Legion M production. This, fan investors help get movies made and all that. So they have like a list of all the investors at the end of the credits, which are I have a relatively sizable TV, micro print where you can barely read them, and it's most of the screen. But off to the side of the screen, it's a bunch of musicians in a recording studio recording some heartfelt, fairly schmaltzy song about missing and exploited children, and we're going to bring them back. And this film goes from being like this teen coming of age thing to a gritty serial killer movie, and then all of a sudden there's this message about missing and exploited children and the information for those organizations, and then it's this sort of cheesy song at the end, and it was just like, what's going on here? I got nothing against organizations, just to be clear, that support eradicating the cause for having a charity of missing and exploited children. They do excellent work. It's very cool that the film did put that in there. It's just the way that this whole thing was concocted. It just didn't work for me. So, now available streaming, The Man in the White Van.